Good afternoon, CSAEers. It is Thursday, September the 21st, and this is Conquering Content. And this episode is about analytics. So analytics is something that everybody wants to know, everyone wants to use when it comes to content, but a lot of people find intimidating and confusing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just paint some broad pictures for you about how you can use analytics to make better use of your content, just get more out of it in general. So to start with, what is analytics? Analytics is something that plugs into your website. Typically it's Google Analytics because it's free, it's the standard, it's really what got the ball rolling in terms of online metrics as we know it today. There are other platforms you can use, but when I'm talking about analytics, I'll talk in general terms, but there's some things that'll fall back to Google Analytics specifically just because of how broadly it's used, and it is what CSAE uses. So analytics is used to track and interpret the basics of information of traffic going to your website, where it's coming from, where it's going, how long it's there, that sort of thing. It's really useful for targeting your audience for specific things, like if you're doing events, you've got some kind of product you're selling through your association's website. Analytics is a must if you want to improve how you're doing that beyond guesswork. Of course, you can always say, well, we posted this on social media, we posted it in a blog, and we saw some improvements in our ticket sales for this event, so obviously our content works. Okay. Chances are you may be correct, but you don't know for certain. You don't know if somebody else started word of mouth or if people were just waiting to the last minute to make sure all the details in their calendar were sorted out, and then there was a big rush at the end to go and register for it. You just don't know unless you have some kind of metrics in place on your website. So Google is primarily targeted at your website in an immediate capacity. It does have some ability to track social media as well. If you've got Tumblr, for example, you can plug Tumblr directly into Google Analytics, and it gives you the information as though Tumblr was your website. So, and that's a great example. And YouTube also allows you to track through Google Analytics. So you're pulling maximum information through those two social media outlets and media outlets in the case of YouTube. With Facebook and Twitter and say LinkedIn, those are examples of social media platforms that have built-in analytics systems within the social media platform itself, so you're not pulling it through Google. And there are others out there, but those are the ones that are really prominent. LinkedIn used to be so much better at analytics, and it has really cut back on it as they really push their for-pay model. And so, you know, you can't get analytics off of your group discussions. The amount of analytics you can pull off of your update posts and stuff like that is really a minimum. So you're kind of hampered in that way. I view their analytics more as a tease. You know, this is what you could know, but we're not going to open the door all the way. Twitter is really good. Twitter gives you information on how many people are being reached by your posts. It lets you track your followers, how they trend. It gives you information on what is your best trending post, your best trending media, media being images and video, that sort of thing. It lets you know how you're doing in relation to previous months, and it lets you know your engagement. So engagement, when you're talking analytics, is there's reach, which is the term that that Facebook uses. Reach, views, whatever you want to call it. That's how many people your content got in front of. Whereas engagement is things like likes, shares, retweets, that sort of thing. It's where people actually measurably interact with it. Now keep in mind, when you're talking Facebook, your views, when your video goes through their feed, it starts to automatically play, right? If it shows up on their reach, they leave on the screen, it starts to automatically play, but they're not engaged with it. There's no proof that they're engaged with it. So there could be people watching your videos on Facebook, and it's not really showing up engagement because they're not, you know, interacting. They're not clicking on it so it comes up in a bigger isolated window. They're not clicking on it to turn on the sound. They're not clicking on it to like it, to share it, whatever. So engagement is just a measurement of actual direct interaction with your content. And that's not something that pulls through to Google Analytics or whatever. So you have to go to those platforms to see it specifically. What you can tell from social media in Google Analytics is how many people are coming to your website, your web content where you have Google Analytics hooked up from social media. So for example, if you go to acquisition in Google Analytics, there is a link for social, and when you click on it, I'm just doing it on this screen here, just so I can walk through it, then you click overview, and you can set your range and everything, and it tells you how many people have come within your date range. And this is a good thing about Google Analytics as well, is you can customize the date range you want to set for your information search. It'll tell you, how many sessions, and sessions are, people coming and spending time on your website in an individual instance. So if they come, leave, come back, that's two different sessions. So for example, on the default term that I had up on ours, when I go in here, I see that Twitter is within that date range, our best performing social media platform in terms of who is sending traffic to CSAE.com, and then it's Facebook, LinkedIn, and Google+. So why that information is great, it's not just, you can send information to your board or whatever and say, Twitter works great for us. It allows you a degree of intelligence when you roll stuff out in social media. So I would see that Twitter is doing almost twice as good as Facebook within the 2-week range of dates that I've set on Google Analytics right now. So I could look at that and say, Twitter's really working for us. So that's where I've got to customize my messaging more. If I've got an event, say, that is lagging and I really want to push it through social media to increase the amount of registrations, then I would say, okay, Twitter, really got to put something wonderful together for Twitter. Facebook, it's doing pretty good too, so I really got to figure something out for that. LinkedIn is not even doing 10% of what we're doing on Twitter, and G+ is not even doing 20%. So I'll post something on LinkedIn and G+, but I don't have to really push it there because I really want to get this message. I want this message to come out to the best effect. So I'm really going to hammer it through the social media channels that Google Analytics are telling me are doing the best. Now that's for that particular instance. But what I also see is that, yes, LinkedIn and Google+ aren't doing as well. So in an unrelated campaign, I can think about what can I do to get better performance out of those, right? And this is where I can come up with a campaign that's purely social media boosting. I'm not pushing a single event. I'm not pushing a single piece of content. I'm thinking about something I can do to improve performance on LinkedIn and Google+, and just elevate the amount of response and interaction I'm getting there. So that would be, say, putting out content that talks about how associations can be using LinkedIn, how they can be using LinkedIn groups. I could do something like that and become more targeted, and through that, you build some kind of symbiosis where it feeds upon itself, go to LinkedIn to improve our LinkedIn performance. And so there's that kind of thing. So that's how you would use that kind of information for social media. Now from that information, I can then go and track, regardless of where the traffic is coming through. Google Analytics is good for showing where, if it's coming organically, if it's coming from a referral, and a referral is, of course, things like social media and the like, or direct links. So if I post a link to my blog from somewhere else, like say I go into somebody else's blog and say, well, this is a great blog, it's really informative, and in fact we touch upon it here, and I post a link to it. So if someone follows that link to our site, that counts as a direct link. So this is really good for showing when it breaks down the organic and the acquisition, organic, social media, referrals, direct. I can see what's working. So this is under acquisition in the overview. I can see this. And for example, organic searches count for over 50% of CSE's traffic. So more than 50% of the people coming to see CSAE.com, according to Google Analytics, and this, again, this 2-week time frame that I have here, are organic searches. They are looking us up in search engines or otherwise finding us. They might be looking for something else and we pop up in that search. Regardless of what it is, it's not something where we're putting paid effort behind It's not a campaign per se. So the value that you get out of search engine optimization in your content, that goes towards organic. You're elevating SEO, elevates your ability to show up in an organic capacity. So that's where SEO really shines through. And because since I came on as manager of content here at CSAE, I've really put a lot of effort into having SEO in our content. So the organic response we've seen on Google Analytics has continued to go up. And our direct is our second most valuable, and then referrals, social media is 4, and then email. So that's also tells you how many people are coming via email blasts. So right now in this 2-week period for CSE, for example, email has been our least effective means of drawing traffic to CSAE in overall terms. But as with anything with analytics, you have to remember that, and this is extremely important, what you're seeing in analytics are just numbers. They're data. Quite often the context is missing. So don't look at, there's very little in Google Analytics you can look at and just raw data and say, aha, I understand. That's absolutely what's happening. So as I'm saying, the 5th best performing source of traffic, source of acquisition in this 2-week period is email. So based on the numbers, I might go, well, I guess that means email just wasn't working for us. Why are we still doing emails? We should put more time into organic searches and direct traffic. But what that's missing in terms of context is how many emails were sent out. What was that email about? And because this is just a 2-week frame, did that email go out on, say, the 12th day of the 14 days that I was looking at? So there's a context to look at. So say it was just one email, and say it did come out on the 12th day of those 14 days, meaning it had the 12th day, the 13th day, and the 14th day, 3 days worth of traffic, and it came in at 5th spot. So maybe if I extend that window, I see more time than just 3 days, and more emails will come out. Maybe email will move up in that list. All right. So this is why context is important. If I were to look at that and just say email's not working, I would be doing a disservice to the rest of the data. I would have to do some more investigation to see if this email really is failing CSAE in terms of acquisition to our website, or if there's just a context I'm not seeing. So always remember to don't just look at the numbers and think that you're seeing the whole picture. You have to understand how this content is being rolled out, the amount of content that's being rolled out, and who it's being rolled out to. Because again, with that email, maybe it's a small number because that email was a targeted email where it was sent to 100 people. Maybe we just sent it to a specific group of business members, in which case the audience is incredibly small, so the results would seem to be incredibly small, but maybe it's a huge percentage that we got through. Maybe the click-through rate was like 80%, which is amazing for an email response. So again, context. Always look at the context. Don't just look at the metrics in and of themselves, or you're doing yourself a disservice and you're not getting the information correct. So anything you do following off from your analytic information is going to be skewed and off target. All right? And that's something where people really have a hard time with. You really have, they look at the information and think that's all there is, the percentages, the numbers. You have to put time into understanding the context and the analysis. And that's where something, go get some training, do some reading, whatever. But make sure that whoever's looking at your analytic information is trained in understanding what to do with that information and how to examine the context around it. So Google Analytics is also great for understanding your demographics, where people are coming from, their gender, their age. This is really good for determining how best to put an identity into your content. If your primary audience is females over a certain age and they're within Canada, then that defines the voice you can put into your content. It tells you who you're speaking to primarily. It tells you how to determine what images are most likely going to work well when associating with your content, right? You can also learn some great things about demographics. So for example, looking at CSAE's analytics and the demographics, I find that we get more French-speaking traffic from outside of Canada than we do from within. Most of our French-speaking traffic comes from France and French-speaking Africa compared to what's coming out of French-speaking parts of Canada. That's valuable information to have. Okay, so But I'm not going to get that if I just look at the language analytics and say, okay, X amount are French, X amount are English. So I'll be like, okay, that's just French. Where are they from? So when I tie that into the geographic demographic information, that's when I start seeing, okay, there's this amount of French overall, but this amount of French is coming from French-speaking Canada. And wow, this massive percentage is coming in from France. So that's valuable information if I want to pivot my content accordingly. That might tell me that a good way to increase income from our French-speaking events is to go with more webinars and streaming events as opposed to just local events, because that would give the French-speaking aspects of CSAE the chance to bring in more income from outside of Canada, from France and the like, if we take it globally via, as I said, streaming and webinars. So that's the kind of information that is very, very valuable for determining what your organization should otherwise be doing with its resources, as opposed to if I just looked at French speaking as a percentage of our overall language demographic and just said, well, 15% of our traffic is French, so that means 85% is English, so let's just focus on English. I would never have come to the realization that, hey, there's a market out there where we should be targeting webinars and streaming income towards. So again, understanding context and doing analysis is vital for getting the most out of Google Analytics. It's also good to see, you don't want to just look at views. A lot of people look at the views. These are how many people are viewing our website and saying, well, this is as much as I need to know. How many people are coming in? No. You need to know where they're coming in at. What is the point of entry for your traffic? What is it that they're viewing first? This tells you what is really catching on with people, what's resonating with them, but also what you're providing as the highest visible points to your audience. Okay? Typically, your home page will be the #1 landing page, but not necessarily. So don't take for granted that it is. For example, a lot of the time the CSAE website, the #1 ranking page for inbound traffic to come in at and be their first view, thus their landing page, is the conference page, because conference is such a big deal for CSAE and it's something we push year round. The day after the current conference ends, we start pushing towards the next conference. We start 364 days in. So it's a big push all year round, so there's a lot of traffic coming in there. Now, beyond showing where they're coming in, so that, obviously knowing how people are coming to your website and where they're viewing first is important, because it lets you know what other information you should be putting there to give it a high profile. So that's important with the views. But you also want to know where they're going from there. Where do they visit next? Do they bounce off? So bouncing means they come in, look, and leave. If you've got a high bounce rate on a page, it's usually a bad sign, because there's very few web pages where you're just like, I only want you to visit this page and then you can do whatever. Normally you want them to drill down further. So if they're coming to your event page or your product page and then they're leaving, and you're like, well, I only want them to go there. I only want them to see that. But that means they're not going from that landing page to your shopping cart to buy and so on, right? Going further into your website includes going through the purchasing process. So a high bounce rate on a page that's designed to sell something or deliver registration or whatever is bad. You want them to drill down further into your website. So you can go in into acquisition, behavior, and the like, and you can see where are they going to. So, check the behavior flow, shows where they start, where they go, and a lot of this, it gives you some okay visualizations. I personally think that Google Analytics could do better to make it easier to understand with their visualizations, but there's some visual cues there that show you where people are going. Now this is great because it tells you how many, what content is pushing people further into your site. So for example, when I started here, we had some long paths of traffic through our website to get to where we want them to go. The point where it's like, register for an event, buy this book, whatever. You get this piece of information and download it. It was a long, winding path. So it was good in the terms that people stuck through it, but it was bad in terms that it was so long. So what I did is I shortened things up, put some more direct call to actions into the website. And now if you look at that, the behavior flow, people might go, well, people aren't spending as much time on your website There's less time viewing. The amount that they drill down into your traffic is much shorter. So someone who doesn't understand analytics and how to understand the context would look at that and say, looking just at the numbers, be like, well, Stephen, you've been doing a bad job because they're spending less time on the website. But understanding the context is seeing that, here was A and here was B. It was this long path. So now it's here's A and here's B. They're getting to where we want them to go faster, spending less time finding their way around, and it's a more direct route to the purchase, to the download, to whatever. So actually the context is good. In this instance, short is better. So you want to understand that time on page, the bounce rates and all that stuff. You have to understand what it means, but you also have to understand the context with your analytics. That's why it's important that whoever is doing your analytics knows the context of your content as well, and knows how to provide that information to you in a meaningful analysis. You can also get simple things like the best time of day to post. You look at it and see this is when our high traffic is, and this is all visualized as well. So for us, Tuesdays and Thursdays between 2 and 4 o'clock, according to our analytics, is our highest traffic points of the work week. So if there's something we absolutely have to get out, 2 to 4 is a really good time to do it. So this is the kind of thing that's really low-hanging fruit. It's easy to understand because this is all visualized. It's on a chart saying, here's the beginning of the day, and then whoop, there's a spike. How can you not know what that spike means? So you should be posting at that time. It also lets you see things like, are people visiting your site through their desktop computer? Are they coming in through their mobile device? And are they coming in through a tablet? So the browsers and the software that is on these machines lets Google Analytics know what type of machine they are. And this is valuable because you can track whether your traffic is trending more on mobile or tablets, meaning people are more frequently viewing you on those devices. That lets you know that being mobile ready is more important to your website, because there's a lot of associations out there that still do not have mobile friendly websites. And that goes down to, they might say, well, we've got it so that it's a responsive website and everything, but they don't have their content within it to be mobile responsive. And that means doing something simple like making sure your images are set on relative dimensions as opposed to absolute. So what this means to the people who are going to be talking to your coders is you have your images set to say, I want it to appear 20% width. So no matter whether you're on a desktop monitor, which is this big, so your image is 20%, and then you go down to a mobile device where your viewing screen is this wide, your image is still 20% of that smaller screen. So the image shrinks and grows depending upon your screen size. Whereas if you put an absolute value in of 800 pixels, looks great on your screen because 800 pixels is here. But when you go down to the mobile device, that 800 pixels actually pushes off the side of your mobile device. That's why sometimes when you're viewing websites, you can side scroll with your finger, which a lot of people find annoying. You're not just going up and down, it goes to the left and the right. That's because you've got something with an absolute value that is wider than the screen of your device. So that content pushes off to the side, and you can scroll to the side to make sure you view it all. That is not mobile friendly. So it's very good for tracking those sort of trends. Another thing that's important is, and this is something you'll talk to your IT person about, is linking your Google Analytics account with your Google Webmaster account. One of the things you can get out of Google Analytics is the queries, which is the words people are using in search engines to track you. It also lets you know which search engine they're coming from. How many people are using Google to find you, how many people are using Bing, which is good if you're using paid advertising. Do you go with Bing paid advertisement? Do you go with Google AdWords? That's always a good information to find. But it also tells you, with the queries, it tells you the search words, the keywords that they're using to search in search engines to find you. And that means you know the words to plug into your content for search engine optimization. It's an important part of search engine optimization is knowing those keywords. This is something else you get out of Google AdWords. Now, out of Google Analytics. Now, Google Analytics, unfortunately, quite frequently does not give you all of the keywords. if you go into the to look at your keywords, you'll see like it'll give you the number one top, and it will say that it won't actually tell you what they are. So what you want to do there, how is it phrased exactly? Hold on, let me just tell you what it will say to you. Yeah, so the number one keyword right now at CSAE in Google Analytics is other, and that other counts for 60% of our traffic, our search queries. So it's not that people are actually typing in other and it's getting them there. These are keywords that you cannot view through Google Analytics. You can find them in Google Webmaster. So link Google Webmaster to Google Analytics and accept that Google Webmaster is part of your analytical process when it comes to keywords. So if I go, and this other counts for, according to this, 542 search terms. So if I go to Google Webmaster, there I can find out what the actual keywords are for those 542 60% instances of the keyword searches. And number two, accounting for 16% in this 2-week period, was CSAE. So for example, on its own. So this is important information to have. So link those up. Now, and when we talk about things that you can link to Google Analytics, there's a bunch of other third-party add-ons that you can use. And what these add-ons are good for is if you're not good at understanding context or analyzing data, and you just have a hard time wrapping your head around it, you can get add-ons for monthly fees, annual fees, and the price varies depending on what you want, that will take this information out of your account, your Google Analytics account for you, and will visualize it better for you. Some of them use algorithms that take this information and build this context for you over time. So the things I was talking about, the email, well, maybe it was just because it's a couple of days, that's why it's doing badly. Maybe it's because it was one email, maybe it's because it's targeted. So this is the kind of thing where some of these add-ons will look at this and look at your email over time and will interpret this context for you and present it for you in a more naturally understandable language. But they'll also provide charts and tables and better visualizations that just makes it easier for you to understand information, but also makes it easier for you to extract and present to your board or to your content committees, whatever. So look at these third-party add-ons if you're interested. So that is just the basics of Google Analytics and why it's important for content. If I had to sum it up, you have to know how your content is performing to know if it's working. Okay, you can't just put content out there on your website in front of your audience and just say, I think it's doing good, I think it will resonate with them. You need the analytics in the background to analyze performance and interpret your response from your audience, so that if necessary you can reposition and change your content identity, your content voice, reposition the topics you're presenting, how you're presenting them, the channels you're using. All of that can be rejiggered based on the information you pull from your analytics software. It is an absolute must for effective content production. Okay, so that is it for this episode of CSAE Conquering Content. It's analytics episode. If you have any questions or any comments, anything you'd like to add and see addressed, because again, as detailed as this episode may be, it really is just brushing the surface and talking in broad strokes. So if you have any further questions, leave it in the comments section, or you can email me directly at steven@csae.com. Also, if there's a topic about content you'd like me to address, same thing, leave it in the comments wherever you find this content, or email me directly. Until next week, I am Steve Trustrum, Manager of Content for CSAE, and this has been Conquering Content. Have a good week.